Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's a great honor to moderate this discussion, or I believe this could be this will be a good conversation on one of the most, I call it, defining challenges of our time: how to govern human mobility in an era marked by geopolitical disruption, demographic imbalance, and global inequality. So, migration today is no longer a peripheral policy concern. It sits at the heart of debates on sovereignty, economic development, national security, and human rights. It tests our values, our institutions, and our ability to strike fair, strategic, and sustainable compromises. So, I am particularly pleased to do so in the company of two distinguished voices. Moussa Mara, former Prime Minister of Mali, bringing deep knowledge of African political dynamics and regional migration drivers, and Philippe Linderman, a seasoned American diplomat and expert on immigration policy from transatlantic and security-focused perspective. So I will start with you, Monsieur Moussa Mara. In a world where states are losing control of their borders, to traffickers, to war, to climate, who really governs migration today?
This is an important and strategical question. If I look at on our perspective, a lot of young from Africa every single day try to go to Europe and now to America through the different oceans, and without any control of the different government. And that is also to say it is very difficult to manage that, because the economical issues is by far the most important. And my country, the diaspora represents a bit 25% of the global people of Malians. And they send around of $1 billion a year. This is more than the ODAs the country receive. And this is also to say migration is out of control a bit, and is also useful for the departure countries. And that's why it is really an important issue.
Great. So, Mr. Philip Lindeman, you have worked at the intersection of diplomacy, migration, and national security. In 2025, with fragmented institutions and rising instability, can borders still be governed, or are we just managing crisis after crisis?
Well, it's a very good question, and it brings us back to what is the core international order, and it's still the nation state. And one of the basic fundamental pillars of a nation state is a border, a controlled border. And I think in the context of the global situation today, you have seen in recent times efforts to tear down borders, to reduce the ability of borders to control the human movement across them. And that has been to the detriment, I would argue, of the nation state, of the quality of life of the citizens in the nation state, and even those migrants who are moving, because in most cases they're moving in irregular circumstances, illegal circumstances, dangerous circumstances. And it is, in fact, because of all of this situation, we see the rise of organized criminality, international criminality, and we see a massive abuse of human rights. In the context of modern, irregular, illegal immigration, the first victim is the migrant himself. It is something that is to the detriment of the rule of law, the safety of people and families, and it needs to be, in my judgment, discouraged and not promoted.
Yes, totally agree. So, Mr. Moussa, is migration still a humanitarian issue, or has it become a strategic weapon in the hands of both states and non-state actors?
You are right to say it is a strategical weapon in the hand of both states, the departure state and the receiving ones. Because if I look at the situation in my own country, the proportion of young is really high, and it is difficult and maybe impossible for the state to give the opportunities to such amount of young. And letting them go, it is to reduce the pressure on the government. This is something, a hidden policy of the departure countries, and that's why it is a sort of strategical weapon for the country, the departure countries. And for the receiving countries, it is also a strategical weapon, and precisely for some politician, populism and populist actor. And we have a lot of leaders now around the world who use the issue of migration as a tool to get a power, as a tool to make a campaign and to get a power. And then we can say it is also a strategical weapon for them. The reality is we have to work both together. The country of departure of migrant, the country targeting by the migrant, in order to maintain the control on the flow of human across the borders. We have to work together.
Great. Philip, migration has become a political weapon used by states, by cartels, and even by extremist groups. How do we defend borders without surrendering the values those borders are meant to protect?
That's a great question. I think we need to come back to a couple of principles. First principles here are that the clandestine movement of migrants is a massive human rights violation. You see that in the European context about all of the young people, many of them Africans, risking their lives to go to Europe, many of them falling victims in the sea, to criminal organizations, to all kinds of abuses.
Yes.
There is this mistaken idea that we should facilitate the movement of irregular movement of economic migrants because it is some way a response to the human need that the migrants have. I think that the receiving states have made themselves vulnerable to this process for ideological reasons in the receiving states that have to do with what kind of societies they want to be. And therefore, they have interpreted and expanded the concepts of asylum and refugee to encourage and incentivize the movement of people for, as I say, ideological reasons. I think this is a mistaken policy that was very much promoted in Washington during the Biden administration. It is, in my modest judgment, a mistaken policy that's promoted in the European Union. There is the capacity to reinvent the legal norms and the other economic reasons that incentivize the movement of migrants. And this is a system that, you go to the strategic question, that the receiving states really have the power. If they return migrants promptly in a systematic way, the migrants will stop coming. If they accept the migrants, as they do, through long, torturous legal processes that in effect allow the migrants to stay, then they will incentivize constantly more migrants coming. And those migrants, again, to my original point, are running great risk. It is a great human rights violation. Look at the reports that have been done by the International Organization of Migration. For example, they very much studied this question in North America, South America, in the context of Europe, Africa. You see a great tragedy of human rights abuses that's undergirding this whole movement of economic migrants. And I think the real humanitarian mission is to stop that.
Great. Sir Moussa, if security collapses in the Sahel and compassion collapses in the West, what kind of migration future are we designing?
This is a catastrophe. My position is migration is necessary for the departure country and for the receiving one also. If we look at what the migrants brought to US and to Europe in the past decade, that sure migration is a necessity. But migration should be controlled, organized. And this is not possible without collaboration between the departure countries and the receiving one. We have to settle a real collaboration around of the fact it is impossible to stop migration. What we need is to control, to organize, in order to avoid the human right violation, human right violation, to avoid the involvement of the criminal organization, and to organize things. Both sides will take advantage on that. And it is also possible. I think the one thing we forget talking about migration is the diasporas. The diasporas will play and could play a huge role on maintaining migration under control, because diaspora is the main factor for the young to come in the developed country, because they finance the trip, they finance the travel, and they give the opportunity to their families to come. We have to involve diaspora and to organize around them with the collaboration of different countries on the different sites. It is possible to control. Control will be the key for me.
Yes, I agree. It moves me to the main message of the European Union when we approved last year the big regulation about migration and asylum. It's instead of being the traffickers, these groups defining who is moving, it will be the institutions. And this is the main difference. And also, the human movement is about the human history. So we are very curious, isn't it? So, Philip, from your experience in the West, or better, is the West overestimating the security risks of migration or underestimating the risks of doing nothing?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think again you have to define terms, and it has been conflated in the context of answering your question. The movement of people has been conflated into one category. Migration is very much a legal process and an illegal process, and or a regular process. What we should encourage, the only category that we should encourage, I believe, is the legal migratory process. Yes. And those other elements of migration that are all conflated together go to reduce the importance of protecting the legal migration category by equating all the movement of people equally. And this is a mistake, in my judgment. I would also come back and in a friendly way, challenge the idea that it is a healthy economic model to have massive members of one country leave to go to another country to earn remittances and send them back. There is a place for that, to be sure, but then you fall into dependency, and you can look to the perspective in the Americas, and you see countries such as Cuba, Venezuela, and others who have cleared out large numbers of people who would have been the drivers of their own economic development at home. It's a brain drain phenomenon. And these people have found refuge working in labor jobs and other kinds of jobs in North America, sending back remittances. It's gone on for a generation, more than a generation. And what you see is stalled development in countries in Latin America, vis-a-vis the United States particularly, where the model is not really sustainable. People sending back remittances instead of developing the country itself. And that is another thing, that's another victim of this process of sending back remittances. Countries in West Africa, I can imagine, have their own futures that are going to be built on their own citizens building those countries the way the countries in the past have always been built. You have to be in the country, dedicated to overcome the hardships in that country in order to change that country.
So we are almost getting to the end, but I need to make these questions to the both. how are you seeing this moment that we are facing now, especially, for example, in Europe? I'm here, America, Africa, in Europe, this migration issue. Are you thinking that you think that we are dealing well with this issue, approving this regulation?
I saw in the past the summit in Malta, organized between the European Union and African Union, try to organize the flow of migrants in order to maintain a minimum of human movement, and also to create the condition for the people to stay in their country and to work to develop their country, as Philip said. We have to organize. We cannot only focus our attention on illegal migration, criminal organization,
Yes.
and to criminalize the migration.
Yes.
We have to focus our attention on the whole of
The good
the
things
topic,
about
the different things,
Yeah.
good things, bad things, and the strategical one. And we need also, and I will end by that, a real political will in our side. The politician in our side should have the mind of to maintain the brain of our country inside. Organize a bit the system, but the strategical will should be to maintain and try to develop our country on our own.
Great, Philip.
I think it's a great point, and I believe that too little emphasis is put on development in sending countries as opposed to the receiving countries in North America and Europe. I agree with that. I think another priority in this area is to remake the international legal norms that currently exist. They are all based back to essentially the 1951 UN Convention on Refugees.
Yes.
And that is a legal framework that comes out of a Cold War context in which there was not massive economic migration in the world. And keeping this structure in place, unfortunately, incentivizes illegal migration or irregular migration, because those migrants who are moving, as in human nature everywhere, are about, in the first instance, improving their own situation and a lot of their family. That's what most
Yes.
migrants are always thinking about economically. And until we change the norms on illegal migrants, refugees, asylees, the whole 2018 Global Compact on Migration, which was about incentivizing for humanitarian reasons the crossing clandestinely or however borders, you create chaos. And this is the moment that we're living in the United States. This is the moment I think that Europe continues to live. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for the countries in West Africa. It's not healthy for the receiving countries. And it needs to be, my final word on that, it needs to be remade, this legal architecture.
I totally agree with you. My question is, can we do it now with the United Nations? And do you know what I mean?
Well, they're in trouble. There are people and organizations, because they are used to the systems that exist, that are reluctant to change. They have defined it as if they are, in fact, promoting human rights, while I would argue they are not.
They are not, yes.
Money is being streamed to them, to NGOs and other government institutions in massive ways.
Without accountability? Because
Yes,
sometimes
yeah.
we don't have the... Sorry to bring this question, because sometimes it's difficult on these organizations to find what is the real accountability. Is about you give money, and the good question is to be, how are you spending? What are the results?
Yeah.
Because if it's not working, we need to change our direction, isn't it? So I totally agree with you, Philip. I think we need to change. People are very fear of changing sometimes, and this is very bureaucratic institutions. Sometimes they try to avoid change, but I really hope. So it was truly a great honor, besides a great pleasure, of course, to have this conversation. So we only have this time, so I hope we will have another time to discuss these issues. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.